Hi everyone, I'm Mike Abadi. Welcome back to VTblogosphereTV. It's episode number 31, and we have a repeat offender here. Philip Baruth is back. Thank you so much for coming on. And,
yeah, sure.
It's a freshly minted state senator from Chittenden County. A few years ago, you came on with episode 3.
Yes.
And really helped launch the legitimacy of this project, and that is much appreciated.
Yeah, it was back before the show went corporate. You know?
That's right, that's right. Yes, you have to wear this logo. Congratulations on winning your Senate seat, and you were sworn in mid-late January, early January?
Early January.
And what did they do to you to make you one? What kind of?
Yeah, it's kind of a laying on of hands. No, it's a wonderful day at the State House. You bring your family if you want, and I brought my kids and my wife, and they sat on the little period settee in the Senate chamber, and then you have to repeat these charms one after the other, and then magically you're a senator. But they're moving charms. They're oaths to the Constitution of Vermont and the Constitution of the United States, and I think about that. We have a moment of silence a lot of times before we begin a session, and inevitably my mind goes back to that oath, and what did I promise people, and what's my first principle supposed to be?
So those kind of rituals actually have a place.
Yeah,
and meaningful markers.
Yeah, and I think it's really nice to have all the people who are senior, who have been there, they kind of rally around you and welcome you to the body, as they call it.
Right, right.
So.
It's I'm thinking how bloggers are often portrayed as very unceremonious, and
right.
sort of like purposely uncivil.
Yeah.
And that's not really a type of blogging you've engaged in, but I guess has your role as a state senator now affected what you put up on Vermont Daily Briefing?
Yeah, very much. And being a blogger has affected my entry into the Senate, because people were a little bit unsure, how does it work? Can we trust you not to report what we say, et cetera? I had one person who shall remain nameless call me up before I was sworn in and say, do you have a minute? And I said, yeah. And this person said, I was just reading about WikiLeaks. What do you think about WikiLeaks? And I said, I don't know. And I said this or that about WikiLeaks. And then the person said, you know what? It occurs to me that your blog is kind of like WikiLeaks. And I was like, no, not really. But, it was an anxiety that was there.
They were concerned potentially it could become a,
right.
Guess what I heard in the coat room kind of postings.
So what I've tried to do is limit myself to either things that are public knowledge or things that are my spin on things that not very many people know, but that are available from other sources. So I'm not doing a lot of, in fact, no reporting of things that are, breaking news, because almost always the things that I hear are meant to be kept quiet for a little bit until this or that comes to fruition. But I still enjoy giving a little twist to things that not many people know about, so that it feels fresh.
Right, right. You actually, I guess, called out by the Free Press's blog, VT Buzz, I think it is.
That's right.
When you don't blog, you generate content for a blogger to note that you aren't blogging as much as you used to. As imagine the time crunch is.
Well, yeah, during the campaign, and it's not their fault, because in Chittenden County there were 16 candidates. So they can't cover one candidate without covering them all.
16 for 4 seats?
For 6 seats.
For 6.
But the fact is, for a year and a half when I was running, I could not get a story written about me. And the minute I finally eke my way in, they write a story about how I'm not blogging anymore. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well,
no good deed goes unpunished.
That's right. You did recently write on, I believe it was in MoveOn.org.
Right.
Online petition concerning corporate personhood, or the Citizens United Supreme Court case, and talked a little about always wondering about the efficacy on the end of signing one of those things,
Right.
and trying to do the existential math on what kind of.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I've kind of traded places across the desk. So for the last 10 years, I've been trying to work at political change digitally and through grassroots activism, and I think having some mild impact, but it's a much different thing to be on the other side, and then to see those people who are going at it in the way that I was bring their issue as far as me with the idea that, okay, now you got to take it the rest of the way, which is a whole different set of things to think about. So I had over the years filled out a lot of MoveOn.org petitions. And you say to yourself, I'm going to be active. And then you cease being active.
Right.
Because the petition got sent.
Right.
And there's some part of you that suspects it got thrown away or whatever. But literally, my friend Andy Grayson, who supported me in the campaign, also is connected to MoveOn. And she was the person in our area who collected these petitions and then called me up and said, I have to physically deliver them to you. And so we made a time and a place, and she handed me this stack of petitions, and that meant something to me. It meant that I should not just write about it on my blog and my Facebook page, but that I should turn around and initiate something, in response.
Right.
So Ginny Lyons, senior senator from Chittenden County, she has a resolution out that is supporting the creation nationwide of an amendment that will roll back corporate personhood.
Okay.
And so I've been and continue to be a vocal supporter of that, because I don't see another way to do it with the Supreme Court where they are.
Right, right.
So.
The background there is that the Supreme Court of the Gilded Age, sometime in there, took the 14th Amendment, which was basically the Equality Clause of the Constitution after the Civil War, and said, yes, corporations are
people too.
Are people too.
And
so,
what I think is really interesting about that decision, Citizens United, it basically says a couple of things. First of all, if you're a corporation, you can spend as much as you want on elections. You can't give directly to candidates, but you can run issue ads, and you can swamp the field if you want to.
Right.
Any amount is fine. So, 100 or a billion, it's all the same. You can do it anonymously. You're exempt from these certain reporting limits. You can do it right before an election. So you not only swamp it, but you buy up all the airtime available and create an effective monopoly. There's no reason why you can't do that. But the other thing that it says, if you read between the lines, is corporations are people. We want people to be good citizens. Money is speech. And therefore, if you're a good, active citizen as a corporation, you will do this. Not you can do it, but you should be doing it to
engage
exercise
the
your
process, right?
your democratic rights.
Yeah.
So it's literally encouraging the flooding in of billions of dollars. And if you look at the 2010 election, Karl Rove's group, Crossroads, you could trace 3 different races to their ads alone. And when you're talking about the Senate, 3 seats is a tidal wave.
Right, right. So in terms of the now what, it would need to be 3/4 of the states have to state legislatures?
I believe that's right.
There's a few ways you can get a U.S.
Yep.
constitutional amendment, and that's one of them. So would Vermont just try to start that ball rolling by saying the legislature would pass it?
I don't know exactly. I would have to look. I don't know how that starts. I think you have to pass it in the House and the Senate. Maybe it's just the Senate, the U.S. Senate. I'm not clear on the process, but once that's been passed, then the ratification process begins, and it goes around to state legislatures.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I believe that's how it happens.
Okay, that's helpful. And then, it's making me want to actually talk about Yankee.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because energies are people's too, right? So we're at a point now where the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, again, federal, this is another state-federal interaction going on, has licensed Vermont Yankee for another 20 years.
Yes.
And the state legislature, last legislature is on record as saying we're not going to renew. And Vermont is one state that has the right to say that. I guess that was in the passing of the original Yankee creation bill. Somehow we got the power as
Well, I think it was in this later memorandum. I think it's 2006. A memorandum of understanding that allowed Entergy to do a couple of other things they wanted.
Oh, it was a trade-off later.
Yeah,
okay.
to store dry casks on site, et cetera. But, let me answer in two ways. So I'll answer pre-Japan and post-Japan. So pre-Japan, let's go back 3 weeks.
Sure, rewind.
There was no chance that it was going to come up again in the Senate, but a few senators had put forward a bill seeking to strip Vermont of its right to have a say in whether or not relicensing happens. And I didn't think the votes were there, but it was a little worrisome because you never know. In a body of 30 people, 16 is the majority. So a switch of 5 or 6 votes can be a big deal. Yankees spent millions of dollars since last year's vote. They've actually brought their poll numbers up in terms of their favorability ratings
Really?
as a corporation.
IMVY, that campaign is
Exactly, that has had an
successful,
impact. So I was talking with people and we were sort of half strategizing about, well, how would we prevent this from coming up? If it did come up, what would we do, ... Japan. So the tsunami and the earthquake together in Japan hit the reactors, and what they did was exposed all sorts of horrible flaws in their worst case scenarios. So they had really good earthquake preparation, but not earthquake/tsunami preparation. And so that knocked out their power, which knocked out their cooling. And before you knew it, you had 3 partial meltdowns in one plant, 3 different reactors. Now, those reactors are the same make and generation as Vermont Yankee. So imagine now that you're a senator in the Vermont Senate and you stand up with people still fleeing Japan. Tokyo is emptying out, partially as a result of this. And you're going to say, not only is it not a good thing that we have the power to shut ours down on schedule, but it's a bad thing and we need to strip the state of that power. So now I think it's ludicrous as an issue, but there it is. It's a zombie that will not die. The people who want that plant to come back and be relicensed, they won't stop until the switch is thrown and they put the pile in safe store. Until then, they're going to fight and fight.
It's amazing to think that people in a government entity would even propose to give themselves less power. They were basically saying, strip away our power. I mean, if you think of Obama's now, he now is executive power. His job is to defend executive power. He's doing things people on the left may not like, but you kind of get it. Of course, he's the executive. He's going to protect executive power. But the bill that was floated was actually to say that the state wouldn't get a say, that it would purely be a federal licensing issue, and Vermont would just sit back and say, oh, okay.
And for that reason, it makes no sense to me as a strategy. I think it would have been better strategy on their part if what they wanted was to relicense the plant, to push that. But to strip the state,
the rules,
the legislature of power, you're right, it cuts across human nature for people to vote to give away their rights.
So if that had passed last year, that means the NRC's decision would be the decision. There would be, now we would be talking about closing it in 2030, whatever that is.
And the one thing I would point out is those Japanese reactors were supposed to be taken offline in a month. So when the earthquake hit, there was 30 days, roughly, before they were scheduled to be decommissioned. And they were going to be decommissioned.
Oh, really? Oh, that wasn't just a servicing. That was
well, from everything I've read, they were at the end of their lifspan, and
they were late in the game.
Who knows? Maybe they would have said,
back.
"Oh yes,
Yeah.
15 more years," but their 40-year life was up, and they hesitated, and they didn't bite the bullet, and they didn't make that happen, and then they got caught with 3 different disasters in one.
Wow.
And Peter Shumlin is very eloquent on this, but we have a plant sited on the banks of the Connecticut River. It's not the place where you want to be storing fuel. It's not the place where you want to have a plant in safe store for 80 years, because floods happen, not just tsunamis, but major floods.
Right, right. Now, you were assigned committees as a state senator, so did you get to make your picks, or did people rank order their 1, 2, 3, or
No, there's a totem pole, and I'm the ground.
Okay.
And so I got
freshman.
Yeah, I got clerk of 2 committees. Clerk being a glorified title for bottle washer, kind of gopher position. But I'm on education and I'm on agriculture. And education, I asked for agriculture, I didn't, but I'm really loving the agriculture committee. We're going through a food renaissance in the state. Farm to Plate is up to speed. We're funding it now. We're implementing the work report that committee came up with. And it's exciting to see a place like Chittenden, where I'm from, to see that become a regional food hub, and to see Raffle in Rutland taking off. And these regional centers, I just think are the future of Vermont. So you have your local farmers markets, and then you have regional cooperation. So you're doing maybe some processing, some flash freezing of your fresh vegetables, and we can increase the amount of local food that we have by 5% and add thousands and thousands of jobs. So that's what we're focused on doing, is trying to take that Shumlin campaign promise and figure out how do you actually do that on the ground.
So amazing to me is that Vermont is, I remember Michael Pullen was visited Vermont, I think he was doing book tour type thing, and he said that Vermont and Northern California are like a generation ahead of the rest of the country in terms of the local foods movement.
Yes.
And it really makes sense in California because they have 3 growing seasons, but somehow us, where it's late March now, they're in a lot of the country, people are starting to plant, and we're still waiting, to really get going. But somehow culturally, we are ahead of the game, even with our short growing season. It's amazing.
And people are pushing back on the growing season too. So we have people doing winter growing, with different kinds of greenhouses and hardy plants that can germinate during those periods. But also, you've got vineyards that are making ice wines. So they're actually taking our handicap and they're making that a selling point.
Yeah.
Shelburne Vineyards has a great ice wine. It's delicious. It's a little pricey because it's like liquid gold, but it's fantastic tasting. And it's better here than it would be if you grew it in North Carolina.
Sure.
And that's counterintuitive, but that's what you need to do with a niche market.
Right. So, and the other committee you're on is education, and you're an educator, so that must have been a near and dear.
No, I mean, on agriculture, I nod my head a lot because it's not my specialty. On the education committee, I'm not only a teacher, but I did 2 terms on the Burlington School Board, so I feel like I know the basics, and that's good. On that committee, we've done something that I'm really proud of, which is I was really concerned about pre-K and early education. And so my goal immediately when I got on the committee was, what can we do to expand pre-K? And my committee chair, Kevin Mullen, great guy, he wrote up a bill, very simple bill, that takes the existing caps and just eliminates them. And the reason why we need to do this, I don't know if people are aware of this, but if you're in a community that has pre-K, you can only use it for so many kids. If more kids want to use it, you literally hold a lottery. So they have a hat with names in it, and one of the pieces of paper has your kid's name on it, and if it doesn't get drawn out of the hat, you lose. and they call you up on the phone and they say, your kid lost, your kid cannot be educated at government expense.
Set the tone for the rest of their lives, right?
Right. So what they have to do at that point is not just pay full shot for their kid's pre-K, but they have to pay for their neighbor's kid to be educated.
Because their taxes are
right.
going there, right?
And that's insanity. What this bill does is it completely gets rid of that, and it looks like it's got a path to getting signed. So I'm real proud of that.
It is now out of committee, or it's moving along?
It's come through 2 Senate committees. I think it leaves appropriations tomorrow.
Okay.
And then it'll get voted on in the Senate. It'll go to the House. And I think because we've done a lot of testimony and a lot of work on it, I think they may take less time, and they tell me it's got a good chance there. So.
Great. Now, coming out of appropriations, does that mean they put the price tag on it, or how does that?
Well, there's already a price tag on it.
There's already a price tag.
They're the ones who say if it gives them sticker shock.
Okay.
Or
they
not.
approve or not. Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
To my mind, for what you're getting, it's very cheap. So for the next year, to cover everybody in the state that's not getting pre-K, who wants it, whose district offers it, will cost somewhere between $100,000 and $190,000.
Okay.
Now that's in a budget that's in the billions of dollars.
Right. Right.
So it's a rounding error to my way of thinking, and it's a rounding error that gets you incredible benefits down the line.
Okay. So do you know how popular pre-K is throughout the state? Many towns offer it.
I would say
and
very and growing, but there are, it's not mandatory. Parents don't have to take their kids, and districts don't have to offer it. And we are preserving that choice aspect of it. So for instance, Rutland doesn't provide pre-K. And, I think they have political considerations and budget considerations, and they've just made that choice, and more power to them. I wish for their kids' sake that they would do it, but they have been elected and they have the right to make the decision.
Okay. It's 30 senators.
Yes.
And it's almost 2/3 Democrats?
22 Dems, 8 Republicans.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Wisconsin right now. I mean, we're in a much better situation.
We seem so sane.
Yeah. But we also have a budget that looks like it's going to get cut.
Yeah.
And it looks like the majority party has the scalpel in its hand in this state.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's clear as to how that's going to play out or where we are in the process. I guess we're sort of, are we at the halfway point of the legislature if we get out in May? And
I think we're past
the halfway.
Yeah.
People are talking home stretch.
Just a couple of things about that. In our state, instead of stripping workers of collective bargaining rights, the governor made the decision to work with the unions, and he got unilateral concessions from them. And those unilateral concessions are on the backs of 2 years of unilateral concessions. So now for 3 years running, state employees have voluntarily taken a hit, and they've done it to help out and to provide sacrifice that shared over their membership they feel they can take. And that's what I think should happen in Wisconsin. That's what should be happening in Ohio. Because it's a tough budgetary year, not just for Vermont, but every state in the country, and you have to close those deficits. But, state employees are willing to help. What they're not willing to do is be stripped of their rights and then forced into contracts that will render them, comparatively speaking, servants to the state rather than respected workers.
Sure.
So I'll just take the question in one other direction, and that is there's a dispute going on in the State House, and it's happening in many different forms, but it boils down to this. There's a large faction in the House and the Senate, and the governor, I would put in this group, who says Vermonters are taxed too much, we can't raise any revenue, and we have to close the budget gap, $170+ million, with just cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to my mind, if you do that 3 years into the Great Recession, we're going to not just cut to the bone, we're going to be amputating.
Mm-hmm.
So I've made it clear, as have many people from the other group, that I don't want to go there, and I refuse to go there in terms of my own vote. So I won't vote for a budget that does that. I want to...
That's exclusively cuts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want there to be a package, so revenues are on the table. But the other thing that I'm talking a lot about is the rainy day fund. So the state has $50+ million in the rainy day fund. And for the last 3 years, we've been, I would argue, baited and switched 7 or 8 times on the rainy day fund. So Jim Douglas said, we can't spend it this year because we might need it next year. Mm-hmm. And then next year he said...
Still not rainy enough, right?
Right. But what makes now different is that it's not only raining, but the ERA funds, the stimulus money, is gone.
Yeah.
And that people refer to as going off the cliff. So you had ERA money, now you're going to go off the cliff. So we're raining and it's going off a cliff simultaneously. To my mind,
season, right?
Yeah, that's when you go to the rainy day fund. So what I'm going to do is try to put a group together to support the idea of spending down a substantial part of the rainy day fund, maybe somewhere between $15 and $20 million.
Less than half.
Right, with a plan to pay that back through increasing revenues on the top 2 marginal tax brackets.
Okay.
And we'll see. We'll see how many are in the one group and how many are in the other when the deal goes down.
So you're not in the appropriations committee, but you can organize coalitions around. Like how does that work?
I think that's a grand word for it. What I'm going to do is beg people, please don't do this.
Right.
And I can count on myself. I don't know. I'm a new senator.
Yeah.
I've never tried to broker any sort of agreement, especially not over something as fundamental as the budget.
Sure.
So all I can say is that I won't go down without a fight.
Sure.
Will I
Or
go
alone.
down? I think the odds are probably there.
Right.
But I've been surprised. Anthony Polina has been out with Chris Pearson from Burlington, and they've been trying to air the idea of this very, very slight increase on the top 2 brackets. Mm-hmm. And they say it will raise $18 million, and they've poll tested it through an outside organization, and it's broadly popular. Mm-hmm. That's no surprise, given that nationally, if you ask Americans, how do you want to close the budget gap? How do you want to fix Social Security? Inevitably, what they say is the rich need to contribute more because
they've had a great run.
Yeah, in our country, it's insane, the gap between rich and poor. So I think, if nothing else, we can make a really loud counter argument, and who knows, maybe we can, with some help from you all, maybe we can win
make
that
a little
fight.
noise. There's larger structural economic issues there, but actually it can come down to a small state's budget and how the burden is shared. So I'm getting the word we got to move and have a productive time there.
Can I just congratulate you on this show? I mean,
sure
I did one of the early ones, and I've watched not all 31 episodes.
That's okay.
I've probably watched 15 of the episodes.
Thank you.
And they're fantastic. It comes out of Orca, which is a great community media organization.
Amen.
I mean, it's the best of what television and the internet should be doing.
Oh, thank you. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
And what you've done, Philip, moving progressive ideas from the screen to the State House is to be commended as well. Love Fest, people. All right, good night.
Figure out ways to get as much of the money. Let me start over. The old rhetoric of class warfare. My attitude is, as I mentioned, we're a strong nation, but we're also a blessed nation. And it's important for our citizens to recognize it. You're blessed. There is responsibility to recognize blessings are a two-way street.